Okay, so as you guys probably just heard that, we are recording now. We're 1 minute away. Um, and right at 8 o'clock, I'll give a 5 second countdown and then we will be live.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Rachel.
Okay, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to Facebook Live. I'm Craig Andrus with KSNW TV. We're the NBC affiliate here in Wichita. Happy to be talking with some experts on substance abuse. It is kind of a rough topic for a lot of people to talk about. I didn't want to start out with some introductions. I'm going to start off with Jim Wahlberg. You're brother to Mark Wahlberg, of course, Wahlberg Foundation. Thanks for being here. Thanks for what you do. Tell us briefly what it is you do and why this is so important.
Well, what I do is I'm been thrust in the role of being an educator. And why is it important? I mean, I feel like it should be important to everybody, right? We're losing hundreds of thousands of young people over the last couple of years to an epidemic that, we hear a lot about the southern border and different things, but this epidemic was really started by men in fancy suits, here domestically. And then when they got shut down, there was left a big void behind. And then our friends from the southern border were happy to step in and fill that void. People are dying at an alarming rate. And we all need to throw our hat in the ring. We all need to do whatever we can do and bring whatever we can bring to the table to try to make a change.
Well, I appreciate that. We do have some other experts with us. I want to introduce Greg Anderson here, DEA Resident in Charge. Tell us what you do and why you're passionate about being here.
Hey, thank you, Craig. DEA works large-scale criminal organizations focused on drug trafficking, and we believe it's important. Our young people and other citizens are falling victim to what these people do. It hurts society. People die. We lose brothers, sisters, parents, kids, aunts, and uncles. So it's really important that we take these discussions and move them forward and try to help solve the problem. Traditionally, law enforcement has just tried to wrest their way out of this. And it's important to enforce the laws that we have. But in order to solve this problem, it's so much bigger than solely enforcement. And this program here today is a part of that.
Well, thank you. Jeff Easter, Sheriff Sedgwick County, you popped up. You're on the enforcement side. Say hello and introduce yourself and why you're passionate about this as well. I know you are.
Well, good evening, and I appreciate everybody joining us today. What's important to me is that we are in a epidemic when it comes to methamphetamine and opioids. And as Greg has said, we're not going to rest ourselves out of this. And so we got to change the way that we do law enforcement more from an educational and preventional standpoint. And we got to reach the kids, the teenagers and those type of things to try to educate them so that we can get out of where we're at right now. So I do appreciate you having me today, Craig.
Thank you. Great for you to be here. We appreciate it. Dr. Larry Mitnaul, you are also a psychologist. You deal with kids and families. Tell us about your passion and why you're here today.
Sure. I think you really said it rightly. I mean, I spend a lot of my day and weeks and days during the week seeing kids, seeing families, helping them to talk about the hard stuff of life. And so this topic is really, really important because often I tell families and young people that I see that we're only as sick as our secrets. And so we're doing something about it. And I'm grateful to be able to combine my voice with these really great guests because it is going to take a village to get there. And so I'm certainly kind of passionate about helping our kids in any way that we can to make our society great.
Thank you, Doctor. I believe I said psychologist, or did I say psychiatrist?
I think you said psychologist, but we're brothers in arms. So
also trying to get people some help, real world stuff. Brenda Dietzman joins us now. I know you're retired from the Sheriff's Department. You're working with Mental Health Substance Abuse Coalition, trying to help people get help. Say hello.
Hi there. Yeah, I spent 28 years in law enforcement, and I spent a lot of that time in community policing. I ended my career in charge of our jail here in Wichita, and saw it every day. I mean, saw it every single day, and how not only affects the person that's in the jail, but also their families and their friends, and how costly that is to them and the community at large, because we're losing those people. So very, very passionate just from that. And when I retired, I often tell people you can retire from a job, but don't ever retire from your passion. And so I retired at a young age and wanted to get back into this, and this opportunity became available to be the project manager in charge of the Mental Health and Substance Abuse Coalition here in Wichita.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Jim Wahlberg, I wanted to go back to you for a moment and kick off some questions here. First of all, how do we know when somebody's got a problem? What's the big thing? What's the big sign?
What's the big sign? I mean, I can tell you from personal experience, right? I'm a person in long-term recovery. I'm also the parent of a person in recovery. And, as a person in recovery, I can tell you this. It's real easy to miss the signs if you're not looking for them. It really is. I was not looking for the signs. I couldn't believe it. My oldest boy, he grew up all his life hearing about the dangers of drugs and alcohol, and how we weren't like other people in our family, that we had it. It ran through our family, and that we needed to always be twice as careful as everybody else. And still he found his way into experimenting with different drugs and alcohol. And I missed the signs. It was like I was in denial. And you have me on here tonight as some kind of a quote unquote expert, right? And I missed the signs, right? Communication is the key to all of this, right? We need to be communicating with our children and our young people, not just our own kids, but the neighborhood kids, right? We need to be talking to them and trying to understand what's going on with them, and that there's an ear for them, right? And that, but the basic signs that everybody sort of, the generic signs, are sleeping all the time, and changing friends, and, falling back in school, and things that could be chalked up to anything. If you think about it, right? Coming out of a pandemic, right? All our young people are all falling behind. They're all sleeping all the time. They're all locked in their home, right? So it's communication. For me, communication is key to this problem, and to many, many problems in our society.
That brings me to a question for a psychiatrist. Dr. Mitnaul,
Yeah.
How do you talk to somebody if they feel they have a problem? What's the first step in getting them to move forward?
Yeah, I think, the first basis, I love the things that Jim highlighted. I think the first step is certainly, having a relationship with that person. I know sometimes when you're trying to offer, unsolicited advice to someone that you're not as well connected to, it can fall on deaf ears. And so actually the helpful step in that situation might be to reach out to someone near to them, who's proximate to them, whose counsel that they take, or someone that they trust, to help them get the care that they need. If it's someone in your personal circle or family, I think just asking the question directly. I've witnessed kind of a lot of family communications in which people are asking questions, but they're asking in such roundabout ways that everyone's playing kind of a guessing game to get to what is it that you're really worried about is going on in the life of my child, or in my relationships, or how I'm connecting with friends. And so I don't think there's a perfect way to say it, except to say, hey, I love you, I care about you a lot. I'm worried that there's something going on that just doesn't quite make sense. Maybe you're not attending school as well as you should, or not showing up for family dinners, or you're not coming by nearly as much. And I'm concerned that maybe there's a substance here that's getting in the way of us making those connections.
Okay, let's go to Sheriff Jeff Easter. Bouncing off that question, it comes to the question of law enforcement. We are still arresting people, but we don't always want to lock people up. Fine line, and how do we move forward here?
Yeah, there is a fine line there. I mean, when you talk about substance abuse, a lot of times for the folks that are addicted, they're out committing other crimes, burglaries and robberies and larcenies and those type of things. However, I would much rather take folks that are addicted to different substances to a facility that can help them with that addiction. And in the big scheme of things here is you want them to be productive. You want them to get over their addiction and be productive in society, and that will cut down crime. And so that's the big change that has taken place in law enforcement, is that we can't arrest ourselves out of this. And so how do we become a partner in these issues to help people get away from their addiction?
Greg Anderson, on the DEA side, we are still policing. We're going after it. We're trying to solve some of these problems with opioids because there are so many people on this. What can the DEA do?
Well, like you said, the opioids are a huge problem. One pill can kill. We will continue working in large-scale drug trafficking organizations. We're also trying to engage with our communities now. We have a program, Operation Engage. Wichita is one of the pilot cities for that. And we're engaging with John Wright's Track Club, League 42. We're trying to make sure our kids have good things to do to keep them busy. Because like the sheriff said, we're not going to arrest our way out of it. We need to keep the enforcement, but we have to find mental health support for people. We need to find ways to keep our kids actively involved. We need to rebuild families. We need to keep working as a village, as the doctor said. It's going to take all of us to solve these issues.
Brenda Dietzman, we do have resources. Could we use more is the question.
Well, you can always use more, but the hope is we've got some incredible partners out there that are doing some incredible work and continue to do that every day. The Mental Health and Substance Abuse Coalition is kind of that group that's made up of those providers, made up of those private sector partners and public sector partners as well. The city of Wichita, Sedgwick County have been very supportive of this. And getting them and helping them work together and find ways to work together better because there's limited dollars out there for this. And we have a lot of great nonprofits that are working on shoestring budgets, as well as government now after the pandemic. So how do we work together better? Because we have so many caring people and so many very qualified people and organizations out there that are really doing the job right now.
Greg Anderson, let me get back to you for a moment on the DEA side. How big a problem is the opioid crisis that we have? And I don't mean to throw scare tactics in here, but I will say opioids are not always what they appear to be if you're buying them on the streets or getting your hands on them any way you can.
No, and it's hard to tell the difference on the street too. Many of the opioids, it's really fentanyl pressed to look like pharmaceuticals. The color, consistency, the stamp on the pills look right, and it's fentanyl. Over 26% of the fentanyl pills that we've sampled have a lethal dose of fentanyl in them. So one pill will kill you.
I guess again too, and Jeff Easter, Sheriff, let's go to you because I know you've talked about this before. Fentanyl can kill if your system is not used to opioids. Pretty serious stuff. I know we've seen this problem here in the Midwest. We've seen it in Wichita, Sedgwick County.
Yeah, so, opioids, when we're talking about pure opioids, you're talking about heroin and those type of things. Fentanyl is an opioid, but that's also something that is given to you when you have surgeries. And so now fentanyl has become kind of the big drug that is cut or put into heroin to give you a bigger high. And those things is what's causing our opioid overdoses and deaths. I don't want to overplay this. Methamphetamine still is the biggest choice drug in Sedgwick County and the state of Kansas. That's totally separate. It's nowhere close to opioids or fentanyl or heroin. But all three of those drugs are extremely hazardous and deadly.
Jim Wahlberg, we'll bring you back in for this part of it. And this is a generic question of what is it about opioids today? Why so much use?
Well, I mean, it's tied together with a whole bunch of things. First of all, there are many people that sort of stumbled or got injured their way into this epidemic, which is a very different thing. For when you think about addiction, you think about drugs, you think about hardcore drugs, right? Most people make, at least in the beginning, a choice, right? Or it's a progression into harder and harder drugs. Well, now we have people who never did drugs before and never drank alcohol before even, or had any kind of problems with any kind of addictive substances, and they get a prescription that's strong enough to kill a horse. I mean, it's insanity. And our patients that were getting these prescriptions kept getting younger and younger. We went from, this drug is for people in hospice care to make them comfortable, right? There's no concern of addiction, right? And we went from giving this medication to that population to giving the same medication to a 12-year-old who's getting their wisdom teeth taken out or broke their leg or whatever. I mean, but I do want to say something to what the sheriff and the DEA were just talking about, and that is fentanyl, right? So fentanyl is the drug that has been killing all these people for the last few years, right? That's what they're mixing with these other drugs. And I'm sorry to say and scared to say that fentanyl is here to stay, right? Fentanyl is now in every other drug, right? They're cutting meth has fentanyl in it now. It's crazy, right? And so we're getting these drugs that are getting people higher and higher. And for a drug dealer, sometimes a calling card is an overdose, or 2 overdoses, or 5 overdoses, or 10 overdoses, right? Because that's where the really strong stuff is. And that's what I want, because everybody thinks they're invincible, right? Or they want to get higher. And, you know, it's madness. It's complete madness, right? And I wish that there was a simple answer to any of these questions, right? You're looking at a group of people who are very, very smart and are on the front lines in whatever particular area they're in, right? And there's still this sense of, I can't believe this. Like, this is all these people that are dying from overdoses, and then all their families are suffering from PTSD, right? From losing their loved ones. So this has gotten to a point where, you know, if it was any other thing taking this many lives, the National Guard would have the place surrounded, if you think about it, right? And we need, the alarm was being sounded. We were doing a really good job. And I know this is a long answer to a short question, but we were doing a really good job when we were watching the numbers come down. And then we have this perfect storm, if you will, of a pandemic, right? And now the numbers have shot through the roof.
You talked about, and I'd like to ask Dr. Mitnaul about this. You talked about the age getting younger and younger. Dr. Mitnaul, how young are some of these cases, and what is this doing mentally on a stress level? Are people getting help, or are they afraid to?
Yeah, those are really great questions. I think just as Mr. Wahlberg was pointing out, I mean, it is getting younger and younger, and so the studies are pretty clear that, you know, 50% of people in various surveys identify that their misuse of opioid medication, 50% of them got them from, you know, surreptitiously, so stealing from, you know, family, or getting it from friends as well. And so often, you know, in terms of that perfect storm, you imagine, you know, the number of, you know, our young people and even adults who were, you know, home a little bit more. They typically would be maybe without supervision or people physically checking in on them. That created kind of an opportunity, unfortunately, for those numbers to kind of, you know, to spike and to see those things grow. And so we know that these things have very significant and serious consequences on the life of our children and the life of adults. You know, just as Mr. Wahlberg was saying about, you know, kind of the lifetime struggle too for those who really deal with addiction. In many ways, you know, once your brain is kind of in that mode, every day they're making the active choice to remain, you know, sober and to live this courageous life. And so certainly, if we can, you know, spare young people from that first, you know, incidence of, you know, feeling really good in an unnatural way, too, and satisfying that with the things that they really need. So more time with family, more time with friends, more time in nature, more time, volunteering and being, a part of society, but certainly being remote from one another, not having the same caliber of inputs that really feel good and nourish our souls, I think has raised the stakes for sure. And so in terms of protecting the young brains, I like to encourage families to and young people to love their brains, to try to fuel up on those things that are going to be healthy and help them to make really great decisions. Because it's not there's a secondary tier here. So there's one in terms of the medication and what it does, or the illicit substances and what they do in terms of your brain change and the mood changes that are associated with it, and how often people get on this road of pursuing drugs at the cost of other really beautiful and beneficial things in their life. But also it has the legal and societal consequences that come along with it. So in terms of helping kids develop a focus for hope, we want to be able to say, hey, here's a healthy way, to live, and for them to know from their community, as I think we're showing tonight, that that all the people here aren't here to punish or be punitive. The goal really is treatment. How do we get to the core of what it is that's hurting you, whether that's anxiety or illness?
And it's important to recognize some of those things. Facebook, you can ask questions here, obviously. On Facebook, Jerry's saying, look, mental health, domestic violence, and addiction, these things go hand in hand. Brenda, Mental Health and Substance Abuse Coalition, perhaps Sheriff Easter, I'll ask either of you. These things go hand in hand. So does one-on-one approach work, or does it kind of take a village, or is it both?
My internet froze a little bit, so I didn't catch all of the questions. I'm sorry.
Okay, from the mental health and substance abuse side, if you're working on a coalition, does it take a village, or does it also take some one-on-one? It takes somebody getting involved personally.
It takes everybody getting involved, and there's a lot of different ways you can get involved. But it takes the parents, it takes the friends, it takes the church, it takes those folks in the nonprofit, the hospitals, the law enforcement, everyone. To get on board and really take an interest in this. So often we think about, those, the homeless, or the people that just have, the severe and persistent mental illness out there. But, these are kids that are playing, football and basketball and volleyball that are starting to get into this. And so everybody has to pay attention and be educated on this.
Sheriff Easter, who are we finding taking these? Can you give us kind of a cross section of who's being found with these things, perhaps being arrested for possession of these things?
Yeah, so within the jail, we keep statistical information, and about 72% of the inmates inside the jail have a substance abuse addiction. And so what we're seeing is that with the youth, as Mr. Wahlberg has talked about, and Brenda has talked about. So when you're talking in reference to opioid pills for pain relief, doctors are prescribing that at a much younger age. Those kids can become addicted, and then they get cut off. Fortunately, now they get cut off, and they turn to other things. And so, out in the county, what we're seeing is what's called pill parties. It's used to be a lot of alcohol, those type of things were taking place out in the county. Now they'll put out on Snapchat, all the social media stuff to show up with different opioid type pills from their parents or grandparents' cabinets and throw them in a bowl, and then they all take pills and throw them down their mouth, and they're higher than a kite, and it's extremely dangerous. And so we've seen a shift in the adolescent group from strictly alcohol to these other things that is very, very concerning. And the last thing that I'll say is that it is extremely expensive in the criminal justice system when you're talking about these kids or these adults to be incarcerated. And so we've got to look at treatment. Absolutely is the key to this, and education to the young adults that these are the things that can happen. and hopefully help them avoid some of the issues that have taken place over the last 5 to 10 years.
Okay. Brenda, I'll come back to you for a moment here. I know I've got a teen that maybe needs some help, or I need some help with a family member. Is there a crisis line? Is there a number I can call to get some services, get me some help?
Yeah, a lot of times what we find is people have a real issue trying to just know where to go, right? Because if you've not had these problems in the past, there's a lot of things out there, a lot of people out there that can help. So where's the best place for me to go? If I'm looking for advice, or if I'm looking for help from something, the best thing to do is just call 211, and that's the United Way helpline. And they'll talk to you a little bit about what your situation is, and then direct you to some good providers or some good information that's out there. Incredible resource for our community. If you are in crisis, if you are having a problem right now, and no one is in trouble, like physically in trouble, calling the ComCare crisis line at 660-7500, and it's 660-7500. They will talk to you and help you in that moment. There's trained people on the other end of that line that can help.
Well, let me jump in here, Brenda, with a call, and maybe you can answer this. Jim, maybe you could answer this too. I think we all know somebody, right? So Allie's asking on Facebook, what if you know someone who drinks and may do drugs, and they've been doing this for more than 10 years? What help is out there?
Well, there's help out there. It's a matter of, it all begins with somebody communicating with that person, and that person maybe being willing to acknowledge that there's a problem, right? Because it's really difficult now. You can't really force somebody, particularly adults, you can't force them into treatment unless they're a danger to themselves or to somebody else. But speaking to somebody, communicating with somebody, especially if it's somebody that you love, right? Somebody that you're close to, right? Because love is a strong tool, right? It's a strong tool to say, I love you, I'm concerned about you. Now, addiction is a disease of denial, right? But here's the evidence, right? It's been 10 years, you've lost your job 4 times, or you crashed the car a bunch of times, or you didn't show up to my prom, or whatever the external signposts are, or maybe they're not as obvious, right? Some people are able to manage, right, their addiction for a long period of time, right? But exposing that, shining a light on that, this is a disease of the doctor said it, right? We're only as sick as our secrets, right? And when you shine a light on this thing, right? When you shine a light on somebody, when you expose it, what happens in families is nobody wants to talk to each other, right? Because everybody's afraid of whatever it is. And they don't communicate to each other. And so everybody has secrets, right? Because it impacts people in the whole family, right? When there's an addict in the home or in the family, it sucks all the air, all the oxygen comes out of the room, right? So confronting, like the doctor said, in a loving way, hey man, I see this. This is a problem. I don't want to lose you. I love you. You mean everything to me. Or I can't be here for this anymore. I can't watch this anymore. Putting that light on it is a very great way to start, but with love.
Also, I got a question here from Facebook. What if your parent or grandparent is struggling? You got a 30-second. What do you do?
That question for me too?
Let's go with you, and then Dr. Mitnaul. I wanted to ask you that as well.
Listen, it don't matter who it is, right? It's the relationship and the dynamic of the relationship is a little bit different, right? But I'll give you an example. My daughter came to me as a sober, clean, and recovery man and said, Daddy, you're not happy. I want you to be happy. And she was trying to push me to go on a spiritual retreat, right? She said, I want you to know Jesus because you don't know him and you ain't happy, right? And that's how my family, we're faithful people, right? And I couldn't say no. My 12-year-old daughter came to me. You don't get to say no to your 12-year-old daughter. So if your child comes to you and says, Daddy or Mommy, I love you, I'm afraid. I want you to be all that you can be, and I want you to be the best parent you can be to me. Now I'm getting ready to walk that same young lady down the aisle in a few months, right? And our relationship is very, very different because I took that advice. I went on that retreat and I found joy, right? I was in recovery. I wasn't using drugs and I still wasn't happy. So there's work to be done. And calling out people with love is just a beautiful thing. It can be that catalyst that changes everything.
Doctor, thank you for that. That's a beautiful answer. Dr. Mitnaul, give me just 15 seconds here.
Sure.
It's not just teens.
It's not just teens. And I don't know that anyone could say it as beautifully as Jim's kind of personal story. But that relational piece, I think often the person struggling with addiction and keeping this secret is already feeling a lot of doubt, guilt, and shame. And so I think the person who can enter in love and say, because I love you, this is what I want for your life, and try to encourage them to do it, I think that's really a wonderful way to get in. And sometimes that doesn't do the thing that opens the door, but at least gets the conversation going and makes it possible to do it. I think the second thing I'd add, or the last thing I'd add to that, is just for us as individuals, when we get educated about the signs of overdose and withdrawal and what some of the resources are too, I think that reduces our own anxiety as well, because sometimes our biggest fear is, well, what's going to happen to Uncle John or Grandma Sally, if something goes the wrong way. And so I think for our own peace and helping to make ourselves stronger, both at having the conversation and knowing what to do, that's another thing that we can do to add to making the people around us better.
Wanted to go kind of a round table here. Brenda Dietzman, I will come back to you. Somebody needs help. I know there's help out there. What's the first step? What call do they make? Who do they talk to?
I think if somebody's in crisis, obviously, there's always 911. If that it needs to happen, there's 211 through United Way, an incredible resource to get you to the best provider that's in our community. And then, of course, the crisis line at 660-7500 if you're in need, just to talk to somebody that's local that can hook you up with some follow-up care.
316-660-7500.
That's right.
Jeff Easter, Sheriff, I suppose you are able to get a lot of people a lot of help, but you'd like to see more people be helped. You've been pretty vocal about this.
Yeah, I mean, it's we are in a stage right now compared to the crack epidemic that happened in the 90s. It is a total different array of issues that are taking place now. And so, in the 90s, it was all about arrest, throw in jail, hopefully they go to prison. Nowadays, it's not that. And so we have got to look at this from a community standpoint, from all the partners involved in the Mental Health Substance Abuse Coalition, of how we go about addressing this issue in a positive manner that helps the most people that want the help. And so, there's times that people leave the jail, they've gotten dried out, and there's no opportunity for them because of insurance and those type of things. We have got to create an environment that anybody that wants help, that we absolutely get them the help that they need to be more productive. And believe it or not, from a taxpayer standpoint, it is going to cut down the amount of taxpayer money that we spend for hospitals, for jailing services, for police services, and we have a better environment for our community.
Greg Anderson, I want to bring in you here again. Tell me, what else can we do, and can we remediate some of these problems to get people help?
We can. The human aspect, the bottom line is we have to dare to care. We have to talk to our kids and other loved ones. We have to remember to listen, and we have to be bold enough to act, to go find help. When we can't find help easily, we keep trying and trying and trying until we are successful to reach the person that needs help and to find the right people to help them. So we have to care. We have to try to make the world better. and you just have to keep going with it.
I do want to ask I'll ask you one final question before we jump off here, but I wanted to start back again with Jim Wahlberg. First of all, thank you so much for being here and sharing your struggles, what you've gone through, what you've seen. For you, what is the biggest step? If I'm listening at home and like, oh, I got a family member, I don't want to talk about it, but I know they got a problem. What's the biggest step to taking the first step to getting help with opioids or well, any substance really?
Well, I mean, I'd go back to where we started, right? Where my first answer started, right? Is communication, right? We have to be fearless. We're living in times now where we have seen a lot of fearlessness in a lot of areas in our country, right? And we see a lot of people calling out a lot of people for a lot of things, right? And not always in a very loving way, right? In an angry way, right? But we have an opportunity here to call people out in a loving way. We need to communicate. We need to talk to each other, right? We need, I want to say this to people that are watching that might be struggling, right? And people that maybe have really gone far down the scale, right? There's hope, right? If there's breath, there's hope. You're playing with fire because you're dealing with the kind of things that will take your breath away, right? But I'm a guy that was homeless. I'm a guy that was in prison, in and out of prison, juvenile detention from the age of 12 to the age of 25. I spent in and out. If I wasn't in jail, I was homeless, using, right? And now I've been clean and sober for over 30 years, a day at a time. I have the love and respect of my family again. I have children who have never seen me use drugs. I'm a member of a community. I'm a member of a church. I'm all the things that I dreamed about maybe someday I could be because of that first step of admitting that I had a problem and that I was prepared to do whatever it took for that day not to use. And fortunately, or unfortunately, whatever way you want to look at it, I had some assistance, some external assistance. I was in prison when I made this decision, but I had lots of evidence that it wasn't working out my way, and I needed to try it another way. And so if you're out there and you're struggling today, or somebody you love is struggling today, I mean, we got to be bold, man. We got to be bold. We got to be standing up and shouting it out, because guess what? You'll wish you did if you're at their funeral. You'll wish you said something. You'll wish you took that opportunity to bring it up, or to offer some help to that person, or get some help for the person that you love so much. So be bold, man. Be bold, be loving, be kind. What do they say? Mean what you say, but don't be mean when you say it, right? Mean it. Call it out, man, because the price is too high, and we see people dying all around us all the time.
Well, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for what you do with the foundation. You're doing good work. Can someone, whoever it is here, speak to the difference between supporting a family member versus kind of enabling someone's addiction here? And I don't care who answers that. Difference between supporting your family member versus enabling somebody with an addiction, because enabling is something that can, and unfortunately is easy to do.
I'll take a stab at it if that's okay. So, it's often hard to disentangle, but I think if you see somebody's problem growing stronger, and often it follows a path, and that path is that they're more distant, they're more closed off, and maybe doing less of their life and kind of living in 360. And so I think if the things that you do to encourage or support them are leading to more of that, then you may be on the side of instead inadvertently kind of supporting that rather than helping them to get better. Now, ultimately, each individual, especially if they're adult, does have to have has their own drive and kind of motivation as well. And so I think as humans, it can be easy to take on or feel like we have full responsibility for the care and the personal flourishing of the person beside us. We do have some role in that, and part of that is lovingly calling out the things, as Jim said it, calling out the things that aren't going as well in love, but also not handing them a blank check when it's being misused, or or being put to service in the wrong way, or allowing them to have your house on weekends when you're away for vacation, when in the back of your mind you have suspicions that something's going on that shouldn't be there, or they're over the house and that you haven't as dutifully monitored all of the medicine cabinets to be sure that there isn't something that could be a vulnerability for them to get into. So I think there are little ways that we can love people really well, to be sure that we're not kind of reinforcing the behavior or making it easy for them to get into it. But then also look for those areas that it seems that your help is actually only making it stronger, and maybe ask a friend or someone else close to you to give you some feedback. Is this too much? Am I doing something that's not being helpful to them? And then being open to hearing their response.
Okay, listening as well. Do you want to go around here and let's talk about resources? I know at ksn.com, thank you for all being here, but on ksn.com, we've got a story called The State of Addiction, and it is where you can find help. We've got a lot of resources for our viewers and people watching this, and I'm going to go back to saying ksn.com, State of Addiction story, where to find help. Brenda, I'm also going to reach to you and say again, 211, ComCare has a crisis line. We'll go around again one more time because I want to do this. Brenda, where do we find help?
Those places. You can also find help at your faith centers, at your churches, at your synagogues, at your mosques, and there are so many people out there that want to help, whether you are in crisis yourself or you know someone that's in crisis.
Okay, Sheriff Easter, where do I get help so I don't end up in jail?
I think Brenda put it the best. There's a lot of resources out there with our local hospitals, especially via Christie, or I guess I should say Ascension. A lot of resources there. Our local ComCare, SAC, which is Substance Abuse Center of Kansas. And then there's just so many nonprofits that are willing to help, but you have to reach out to them, as Mr. Wahlberg as stated so eloquently before.
Thank you. Greg Anderson, from the DEA side, how can we help people?
Forums like we had tonight is one way to help people. Getting the problem out there, letting everybody that suffers from addiction and their families know there's a lot of people out there in their shoes. There's a lot of people that care, that can help. And then through what Ms. Dietzman and the sheriff are working on, and the doctor, there has to be treatment resources available, and people need to know where to look.
Okay, Dr. Mitnaul, I'll ask you one more time. Give me 2 bullet points here. Where can I get help?
All right. Or maybe these would be my top 3. The Mental Health and Substance Abuse Coalition that Brenda Dietzman mentioned, I think is really important. I think on the national level, I often will refer people to the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, SAMHSA. The upper left-hand tab says find treatment, and you're actually able to kind of find someone in your local demographic, even people from outside of this area. So we have great local resources, but that is kind of a national one too. And then I'll throw my hat in the ring there too. So I also have a YouTube channel where I talk about parenting and substance use a little bit as well, and how to talk to our kids as well. So hopefully those are helpful.
Very helpful. Well, I wanted to wrap this up by saying thanks to the Wahlberg Foundation, thanks to the Rennan Group helping us kind of facilitate some of this. Thanks for everybody just kind of tuning in. And if you're going to see this after we've done the live portion, play it back, listen to it again. There's help out there. I know you can get help. Jim Wahlberg, I'm going to give you the last word here. Why is this so important? I do know we're losing people.
Well, I'm not sure there's anything more important than this is a life and death situation. This is a life and death situation. And I want to go back real quickly to something that you said when you were talking about knowing somebody in your family, it has a problem, right? You have to decide for yourself, are you going to be part of the solution or are you going to be part of the problem, right? Because this times are scary. I'm a guy that believes in tough love, right? But when you hear 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 people in your state died from an overdose, it scares you, right? I can't have my kid out there, and so parents do some crazy things to try to protect their child, right? And we need to make a decision. Are we going to be part of the problem? Or are we going to be part of the solution? So everything, if we're part of the solution, then everything is pointing to solution-based stuff. And if we're going to be part of the problem, then, that's a whole nother conversation.
Jim, I want to butt in here and I want to ask you this question. You've dealt with this. You got a family member that's dealt with this. What if I want to protect my kid or maybe even a grandparent? What if I don't want them to get in trouble? Final thought there, and we'll say goodbye.
Well, I'm not exactly sure what you mean by trouble, but you can go to their funeral if you like, because that's what's going to happen, right? If we live in denial, if we deny it, imagine how tough it is to be a parent or a loved one of someone who's suffering from addiction. Then think about how tough it would be if you found out or realized that you gave them the money or you went and got the stuff for them because they were sick and they needed it, right? And you were trying to protect them, right? We can't, when we do those things, we're putting nails in the coffins of the people that we love. We're putting nails in the coffin, all right? We can't do that. We need shine the light, love, communication. We need to get it out there, get it on the table so that everybody knows, so that, because an addictive person gives a little piece to each person, right? Each person has a little piece, but nobody has the whole story. And if you have the whole story, it's kind of scary, right? And it's heartbreaking. And the only way you can really address it is when you have the full story. So communicate.
Communicate. All right. Hey, I thank you so much. Thank you to Brenda Dietzman, Jeff Easter, Greg Anderson, Dr. Larry Mitnaul. Everybody, I do appreciate the talk. If you're seeing this somewhere, share it with a friend. Let's get some help. Again, everybody, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, I'm coming there. Sheriff, I want to come there. I'm about to start a documentary on meth, right? It's literally, we're starting in about a week up in New Hampshire. I want to come there. I want to meet all you guys, right? And I want to interview some of you guys, talk to some of you guys and see what's going on in your community. So
we welcome you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. God bless you all.
God bless you.
Thank you.